Hey, what's going on? Ryan here with Intersection Records. And this weekend, my brother Dennis and I went to the Fox Theater in St. Louis and saw the great Kansas. I've seen Kansas. This was my fourth show, but my first time in the Ronnie Platt era. So, of course, Steve Walsh has been gone for a long time now. In fact, Ronnie took over lead vocals in 2014. Kind of a full circle moment to see this band, with my brother again, who kind of turned me on to Kansas back in the 70s when I was a kid. And of course, hearing all those great classics on the radio your whole life. My brother had seen them on the Power Tour in 1986. So this was his first time seeing the band with a violin player. And of course, at this point, David Ragsdale is gone. Of course, Robbie Steinhardt had passed away a couple of years ago. The great Joe Denizon is on violin, and certainly he was one of the stars of the show. I'm going to try to recreate this set list the best that I can. I don't have any, setlist.com doesn't have a set list for this show. We had some surprises, and the night was opened up by Jefferson Starship, and then 38 Special featuring Don Barnes, killing it. I'll do separate reviews of those shows. Check those out. Let me try to get into this set list. Phil Ehart is not in the band right now. He's still a board member of the band, but he had a heart attack a couple years ago. He is not performing. And, Phil is a 74-year-old man. And we have a great replacement for him, Eric Holmquist. Let me also continue to say Rich Williams is not fully active in the band anymore, although he did play for most of the show, and we'll get to that. Scott Bernard's taken over for him, and what Rich is now saying, and by the way, Rich has an eye problem. Of course, Rich has always had an eye patch, but he also has something called mascular something on his eye, and it creates pressure and it hurts. He can't tour as much as he'd like to. But what Rich has also said is bringing Scott into the mix allows the band to go on in the future, and it's clear to me that this band's going to go on in the future much further than the original members or any members. On bass, God, why can't I think of band members right now? I used to be good with band members. They have a new bass player too. And for years, Billy Greer was on bass, and Billy Greer started on the Power album again in 1986. He is no longer in the band either, and we have his replacement, Dan McGowan, who did a damn good job. We are going to bring up another famous Kansas bass player because we did get a Dave Hope sighting last night. My first time seeing Dave really kind of made the night for a lot of us. They opened up with Point of No Return, and they're opening up as a band with no original members, even though Rich Williams does come on. We have again Dan McGowan on bass. We have Scott Bernard taking over for Rich Williams. We have Ronnie Platt, who is the star of the show. His vocals are so good. He doesn't quite sound exactly like Steve Walsh, but it's a very more of a mid-range voice, and some of the notes that he hit on this concert were unbelievable. Joe Denizon again on keyboards, the great Tom Brislin, who's been in the band since 18, who was a key figure in their last two studio albums, which are very good. Absence of Presence certainly being one of those albums. Brislin was a huge contributor to that album, but we also have Zach Rizvi in the band and touring with the band, and he is on guitars, really kind of be the lead guitar player. He had a huge impact on 2016's album, The Prelude Implicit, which I can highly recommend that, and 2020's Absence of Presence, where Brislin was more of the writer on Absence of Presence. Rizvi, ZVI, Zach Rizvi is just phenomenal on lead and backing guitars, lead and rhythm guitars. So that gives you the band lineup. Eric Holmquist, again, playing great on drums. We got Point of No Return. We then got What's on Your Mind, which was kind of a surprise off of Left Overture. Play the Game Tonight was next, which was that on Vinyl Confessions? Yeah, Vinyl Confessions. Of course, when Steve Walsh was gone from the band, we had the great John Elefante on vocals. And again, Ronnie Platt's able to sing that. I remember being a kid and thinking that was Steve Walsh on Play the Game Tonight, but it was John Elefante. We then get Child of Innocence from 1975's Mask. A little bit of a deeper track for sure, and a way to bring a song in off that great album. By the way, I've ranked the discography of Kansas on my channel. Maybe I'll put a link to that in the description below. Kansas is one of my favorite bands. But then we get The Wall, again off of Left Overture. Probably my favorite Kansas song, one of my favorite songs of all time. And Ronnie just kills it. And my brother and I are very, very happy with this show and this band. This band that's going to go on to the future with Ronnie. How old is Ronnie at this point? Ronnie is 63 years old, you know. He's been a member of Shooting Star. Now he's got this great gig. And he's had this gig for a long time. He's been in band for 11 years. And Ronnie is just perfect for Kansas. I would rather Ronnie sing than a 75-year-old Steve Walsh not being able to do it. You know, even in the early 90s, when I saw them in 91 and 92, and especially when I saw them in 08, let's face it, Steve was losing his voice. A voice that's one of the best voices in the history of rock, in my opinion. Then we get Song for America. I wasn't expecting that they'd play such a complicated song. And really, off their 1975 second album, Song of America really brings you what Kansas is. It defines the band, much like Anthem defines Rush off their second album, Fly By Night. The second album, Song for America, really defines what Kansas's sound is for me. Then we get the special guests come out, and we get Rich Williams for Dust in the Wind. He then sticks around for Can I Tell You, which is the first song off the first Kansas album. You have to wonder if it's a tribute to the great Robbie Steinhardt, who sang prominently on that song and wrote that song with the band. Just a great way to tie back in the history of this band back from 1974's debut. And then probably, if The Wall isn't my favorite Kansas song, certainly Miracles Out of Nowhere is. We still, again, have Rich on guitar. And now we have a 3-guitar attack with Scott Bernard, Zach Rizvi, and Rich. You know, and again, Tom Brislin is just handling this big, huge keyboard setup he's got. Ronnie's going back and forth from playing keyboards and just singing. Ronnie kills it. Again, we then go on to Encore. They come back, and who do they bring out along with Rich Williams? The original bass player for Kansas, Dave Hope, 75-year-old man. Right away, my brother's like, man, they played Hold On off of Audio Visions. Maybe their last great album, Audio Visions. The last one was Steve Walsh for a bit. And you immediately, Dennis notices the bass playing sounds like Kansas, and it does. Dave settles in, and now we got guitar player original and bass player original, along with these great musicians that are playing this music. You know, get used to it, people. You're not going to have original members in bands anymore. And bands with wonderful catalogs like this need to be heard, and this is the closest thing you can get to a Kansas, and it is Kansas. And I'm excited what Brislin and Rizvi are going to do in the future with Ronnie Platt. I'm just excited about it. And I'll tell you what, yeah, I didn't get to see Phil Earhart 2 nights ago, but Eric Holmquist can play the drums. You know, he's playing notes, in my opinion. Dennis said he's not playing notes necessarily like Phil Ehart is, but Phil's got a very specific style. And he is playing notes. And Eric's playing worked for me big time. And then we get, of course, after Hold On, which is a killer song, Carry On Wayward Son is your closer and your encore. Second song in the encore. Again, we still got Dave Hope on that. We still got Rich Williams. You know, I wish Rich the best with his eye condition. You know, it's got to be tough to be 75, and he's going to be 76 in February. And you know, the night before in Kansas City, they brought out Kerry Livgren and Phil. There is no Kansas without the great Kerry Livgren. Let's start with that. But there's also no Kansas, in my opinion, without the great Steve Walsh. And definitely the influence of Mahavishnu Orchestra by adding that violin sound that Robbie gave. You know, again, what a band, what a night. We certainly had a good time. And check out my channel. We only talk about great music here every day. Peace out. See you.